We've been working with 4-cycle engines for the past couple of weeks, maybe going on a month. Learned quite a few little tricks and tips already, and we're willing to learn a lot more. One of the things we're going to try to do this afternoon, if we have enough time, we're in between raindrops here, is make some kind of a little throttle assembly. This is the OS70 in here, and it is kind of an overpowering engine at best. I guess that's the easiest thing you could say about it, and it could use either a Venturi, which we don't have the time right now to make, and we have other engines to test. So what we thought of doing is trying to come up with a quick and dirty way of adjusting the throttle on this. I'll take the engine out of the plane and we'll see if we can do that this afternoon before we fly again. Sunday, Mike Kajeski took the plane out, flew almost a gallon of fuel, and with all the people in the club flying our test plane and giving us feedback, both positive and negative, one of the overwhelming things that people said is, wow, the plane is way overpowered with this. And this engine, the OS70, turns a 14.5 prop. What we want to do is come up with a little gizmo or something that we can ball link, something we can just close the throttle one little bit at a time and see if that's going to be a practical way to control the speed. Normally with a 2-cycle, you either put a smaller Venturi or head gaskets, or you get into a whole different set of things to decrease the power. But in a 4-cycle, one of the things I like about the 4-cycles so far is they just put out this incredible amount of power. Now this is turning a 14.5, and it shows no signs of sagging or lagging or anything overhead. But I would like to, another positive thing that would happen if I could throttle it back just a little bit, it'd probably wind up using down in the area of 3 ounces of fuel a flight. And once we get rid of that last ounce, we'll be at a dead tie in the weight department. Heat up as this plane is, and it's a 14, 15-year-old plane, one of the things, by having the extra weight in the nose that this bigger engine presents, one of the things we've been able to do is totally eliminate the tip weight. And believe it or not, I spoke to Bob Gieske about that and see if he would shed any light onto it. And he had experienced the same thing with a plane where you've added a lot of weight to the nose. You can pretty much get rid of the tip weight because this is both acting on the same fulcrum arm, the center of gravity, and you have a leverage arm of roughly twice as long. So out here, the centrifugal force is pushing on this, and it's pushing on this amount of weight enough that we've gotten rid of all the tip weight with no negative effect on the flying at all, and we're on full-length 018 lines. Worry about any of the cosmetic work on this plane. This is strictly going to be a test plane, and at somewhere around 70, 71 ounces, it's putting our equipment to a good test. The finish, and by the way, this is a significant, the finish on this plane is Imron. And one of the things Imron gives us is we're going to be testing higher nitro fuels, and it's resistant to higher nitro fuel, where some of the other finishes, the acrylic lacquers and dopes, are not totally resistant to 10 and 15% nitro fuel. And we're going to start upping the ante on the nitro here, just to see if we can get away with running higher and higher nitro fuels. And for the whole first part of this test, the whole problem was we couldn't get the tank shimmed any higher than where it was. This is as high as it can go. Reason for that is, if you look at this, the carburetor, the center line of the carburetor is far off at the mounts by a significant amount. Now, the thing I don't know, and this is the thing I hope to learn in the near future, I hope to learn it from the YS. The YS has kind of a fuel pump system, so it should eliminate some of this. First off, I don't know if I have the carburetor adjusted even close to right. Somebody that was a professional RC flyer or something may get this adjusted a lot closer. But for our purposes, I had this wire just holding it wide open, and we got through about 3 gallons of fuel. The only negative thing looks like I didn't put any sealer on here, and they do suggest you use a silicone sealer on this. We're going to try that. I'll clean this all up. This cleans off with some Brillo or some 1200 scouring pads. But the big thing I want to do now, see, the thing I don't know is if I lower this carburetor, is that going to help the tank shim situation? I won't know until I try it. But for right now, I don't know if I just can close this carburetor just a little bit and I'm going to have to look around at making some kind of a linkage. And I have a little time this afternoon. It's pouring rain, so this won't even be a wasted day. This is the OS70. Recording all my little stuff in a database. One of the things I wanted to try the old air filters we use, as opposed to closing the carburetor. See, it's in a little bit different position. I didn't know if it would fit. Well, we're going to find out in about 5 minutes here. The first thing I want to do, I want to get this exhaust system cleaned up. And this has really been giving me food for thought, wondering if we were going to be able to. Now, another thing I thought of, I wonder if we could just figure out a way of using a carburetor off of 53, a smaller carburetor. Maybe even a smaller carburetor and manifold, I don't know. I mean, there's a lot of things left to explore here before we make a final decision. On the tank, I put this little piece of extra tubing, because what happened, that tube was running right by the throttle, and it did put a hole in the tubing at one time, and we had fuel dripping all over the plane. It was a mess. But I would suggest bending that vent down if you're going to use a stock motor, and just insulating that somehow from these edges on the carburetor are kind of rough. Now, one of the options you have, you can reverse this carburetor. I haven't thought about doing that yet, but that's one of the choices we do have too. When we actually use the motor in a plane purpose-built for four-stroke, to allow for this vent to have a piece of tubing to go back somewhere and disappear, what it's doing is that vent is coming out the top of the plane, and from time to time there's ginge and oil behind it and stuff. But one of the things George Oldrich has recommended, and we're going to start doing it, is put in a couple of drops of Rizlone into this at the end of the flying session. And what it does, it keeps the bearings from getting corroded. A four-cycle engine doesn't have the flow going through it, and any of the nitro residue that does wind up in here, it may cause corrosion. So a couple of drops of Rizlone. George suggested Rizlone, and thanks to George for that tip. We tried running muffler pressure, what amounts to be muffler pressure, and no muffler pressure. Came to the conclusion right away that we don't need this muffler pressure. The muffler pressure is not doing us, at this point in time, not doing us any benefit at all. In fact, it ran considerably smoother and better without the muffler pressure. But again, we don't know if that's going to be effective or as effective when we change the throat of the carburetor or change the setting. Be interesting to find that out. So I'm going to leave that fitting on there and just make a little plug for it for right now. Now, the motor, another thing, just don't want to drop this front cone off because it has that little keyway in there. I'm trying not to when I work on it. Not to do that, but so far there's not an oil leak anywhere on it. All of this is because of this not being silicone sealed. And I have tomorrow, they should begin, in fact, from OS Max, 3 different exhaust systems to try. And the exhaust systems, by the way, are about $22 each right from the factory. So if you order up a motor at the same time you do, you may as well get the exhaust systems just so you have them. Thing to clean all this gringe off is one of our super fine 3M pads, and then we'll use some Brillo and then just finalize it with I guess something to get all of this, some 1200 paper maybe, to get this heavy gringe off. How about cleaning the bird up? Look at this. Every day now he takes a bath. Hey, you're getting the camera wet? You're getting my 4-strokes wet? Yeah, take a bath. That's it. Much of this is going to come off with, actually the motor, other than a little bit of stuff around where that was leaking, there's no, unlike some motors, you take them out of a plane and they're totally black, they're a mess. And this is no different than the maintenance you need to do on a tune pipe header or on an exposed, like a Super Tiger 60 muffler, that type of muffler. But like I said, we do have 3 other exhaust systems, but I want to keep each one of them so I can compare them and find out which one's going to be the most appropriate for our cause here. The Super M, super fine, takes a lot of the rough stuff off, but then you want to get that polish back. And this is something that Wayne Triven gave me at the Nats. It's 2000. It looks like it belongs on a polishing wheel or something, but it's worked real well. And what I'm doing, I'm just going to try to clean this up just a little bit more, because I want to see where, if any, we're going to be leaking oil, where we need to make a gasket, where we're going to need to. I got some stuff from Rich Peabody today that they use to seal race car exhausts and ordinary automobile exhausts, which I assume is not going to be a whole lot different. The 2000 grit is a good, by the way, this, you could find out where we can get this from Wayne Triven. I'll try to get that on a video real soon. But it really, even if you have a Super Tiger 60 exhaust system, this will clean, or a tune pipe header. You know, it doesn't matter. this will work on anything aluminum. It puts a really nice finish on there too, and real quick. Stuff Rich supplied. I know this works really well on the tuned pipes, but the 4-stroke exhausts do get a little bit hotter, and so this is one of the things we want to try on the 4-stroke. I'll pull this all apart, do up all the fittings when I put the engine back together, but the next thing I want to take that, see what I can make for a little gizmo to keep that carburetor at any adjustment I want. Now, I said before, this is not an idea that I've never tried before on 2 cycles. I'm just cleaning some of the grit off because I want to keep track of where, if any, we're having leakages of any kind. So far, like I said, this is only from this little bit around the exhaust. Not even worried about this right now because we're probably not even going to use this exhaust system. But I want to get the directions out. It shows what some of these other screws, what their function is, and we want, if we're going to use this carburetor, we really need to learn a little bit about how to adjust it. So far, we've only got the rudimentary basic adjusting down, but we've got it good enough that we can fly the plane flight after flight. Now, I would say this, the motor stays relatively, if not totally, gunge and oil free, which is a nice way to, it's really nice in fact. Anyway, we want to look at what some of these screws, let me get the directions out and see. 4-stroke motor, you get really good set of instructions, but the thing I need to know most of all, I want to, and I'll do this off camera, I need to know about, and if, since this is all written down, this is one of the things I never did was set this back. This is the mid-range way of getting throttle response cleaned up. So now that we're going to be in the mid-range, we might want to do that. This will be a good time to do it, and I'll just do it step by step right off the directions. It's really handy is to have little tiny screwdrivers. And by the way, I ran this whole series of tests with this not adjusted properly. Just needed to go out 180 degrees from where I had it. But that may or may clean up one of the little things, and that's the screw that controls the mid-range. And that little set screw, you can see one of the things we'd be able to do is rotate this, get it to any throttle opening we want, and then just lock it, use that as a locking pin. The problem with that, I don't want to have to, in essence, take the motor out of the plane to adjust it. I want to make a gizmo, so I'm going to put that screw back and set it in all the way in. Like the best of all worlds here, if I can use this screw as a dead stop, I don't know how open I'm going to be able to make this. Not really. I thought that would work. And then I would just need a spring holding this on. And in essence, when I loosen this screw, it would adjust. And I could do that from outside the plane. Hey, that might, maybe that is going to be the way to do it. Let me take this out and see. Now this is the throttle stop screw. So when I take this out, what I'm going to need is a little, by the way, this is one of the things came from Zambelli's little email thing. I got this as one of the tips on how to make an adjustable throttle. And this looks like, for all purposes, it looks like this is going to work perfectly. Again, we'll find out once I pull that screw out. The screw threads in here. So what I'm going to try to do is taking this out, and then I'll make up a spring. Boy, if this works, will this solve the problem? By putting that screw in there, all I'll have to do is get a wrench down in there, and I can adjust the throttle from the bottom of the plane. I won't even have a hole in the top of the plane if this works. Again, we'll try this. We always can go back to just that piece of copper wire, but then it's inconvenient to adjust it. A helpful tip. When you go to get that screw back in, of course this is in a way, unless you want to disassemble it, you can use a piece of tubing to set that screw back in there. And as you tighten that screw, you can see what happens. It opens or closes the throttle. I think this will just get us through. And what I want to do, I want to make a little spring, and I just need to have something to hook on. I can make a one of the suggestions came in off Bob Zambelli's email list is to make a spring from a half A and just put it on a stud. So I don't have a spring, but I'll wind one out of a piece of music wire, see if that'll work. But this little screw now, by adjusting this screw, and I can do that from inside outside the plane, that'll just give me less or more throttle. That's going to work real well. The other thing, this air filter is a perfect fit, an absolute, it's even nice and tight. I'm going to try to get a little piece of wire on it, but I don't think it's even necessary. Next thing is going to be the spring. I need to make up that spring, and that'll just hold this in tension one way or another. This little spring up out of a piece of music wire. It's old 32 music wire, and I think this will be good enough to hold that open. Similar to a half-A starter spring. If you don't want to make a spring, just use one from a half-A and clip one end off. And again, we got this idea from Bob Zambelli's sharing the email from another fellow. I don't have his name right here, but I appreciate the tip. Now, the way this spring worked out, there's only one little problem I noticed, is when I go to adjust this, which I can do from outside the plane, when I back it out to close the throttle, it's real easy, and this would back it out a half a turn at a time, in essence making it a smaller Venturi. But when I go to open it, it's not made to do what I'm doing. So what I need to do is push it open by hand, and I'll make a little hook that I can get in the plane. I need to take the spring tension off. So what I'll do the next flying session is start with it almost completely open, and you can see it doesn't open 100%, but we don't want it open anyway 100%. And little by little now I can back this off one little bit at a time until I find a point at which that'll work. But that little spring, and by the way, it was a little more complicated making this spring than I thought it would be. It's easier to take the barrel out. There's a little spring inside. Make sure you don't lose that. Wind the spring around a screwdriver and just set it so it's constantly applying tension on that. Now the next thing I want to do, I want to seal up the exhaust system with that sealer and put everything back and see if we can get some flying. And most of all, see if it stops raining tomorrow. Silicone sealer that I'm using, I'm just using a toothpick to get it on the threads. Obviously I don't want to drop any down in the engine. I'll do both sides. You let it dry about 4 or 5, 10 minutes or so. It turns into almost like a jello, and we lock up the parts. And we'll see if that's going to work to keep some of the oil out of off the exhaust system. We'll find out. Once that oozes out like that, what I like to do, just let it kind of dry and then wipe whatever oozes out off. And I'll do all the joints on this just to see if this is going to be a good way to seal this or if this material is appropriate. Again, this is more of a cosmetic thing, and obviously the motor's been running fine, so. But we're going to be changing headers, we're actually going to be changing the whole exhaust system soon, so I want to find a reasonable way of doing this. And by the way, this pipe is steel, the nut is steel, and sealing this, I assume this is one of the things that we want to find a proper seal for this. Now this joint seals up. Again, this works real well on the jets and on the planes with a seal. And I'm going to take that pressure. I took that pressure fitting out. I'm just going to put a bolt there, so I want to seal it, and I don't need a cap hanging off of it. Goodbye. With all those little mods and seals in place, and a little carburetor spring modification, and an air filter. Now this may change our starting routine because we've been dropping a few drops of prime in there before starting, either by hand or with the electric. We'll find out if this is going to make it a little bit better, a little bit worse. Certainly, this is going to change the needle setting, but we'll spend a little time with that, and we're going to see if this another thing too, if this is going to hold up and have less oil. And that was almost 3 gallons of fuel before that got so deteriorated, but if you keep after it, it should be a lot better. One thing good about test planes, boy, no difficult installation problems. That is a noticeable difference now that we have about 3 gallons of fuel through this engine. What used to happen is you would flip it when we tried to do it by hand, and of course trying to develop a technique here that works all the time. You would flip it and it would not be on top compression on the second stroke. But now virtually every time you flip it, it goes through the double cycle. Well, as I say that, it doesn't, but when you flip it real smartly the next time around, and I guess maybe that's one of the indications that it's wearing in the way it should. Not sure. It seems like that might be part of the indication that we're getting 3 gallons of fuel. It's coming up on the point in time where this will really start to, everything will bed in and seed in and everything and be as friendly and powerful as it's going to be. Do now is just hope tomorrow's a better day than today for flying. Now as the sun sets after a totally rainy day, I tune up the weather. And what do you think they're predicting for tomorrow? Rain all day, but hey, we could have gotten out to the field tonight, but just was too late. We're going to hope we get a better day tomorrow. Now, we're experiencing another rainy day here. So what we're going to do is we're going to work on Mike's plane a little bit. First thing we want to do is the hinges that we prepared. We cut them down and serrated them, dyed them with RIT dye. We're going to mix up some slow drying epoxy and glue them in one side of the elevator first. Let that dry, and then one piece at a time. As one is drying, could be obviously working on the next one. So the first thing is you want to get tested each one, the fit of each one in there, Mike.
Okay.
Make sure you can press it in, that it's a tight fit. Do them one at a time. Now getting it, I mean, everybody has their own personal way of doing hinges. This way seems to work pretty well for me. We haven't had a lot of hinge failures in the last 2 hours. Anyway, and one of the things, because it's a rainy day, we probably will get time to fit that. We're waiting on fitting that Magnum up into the other Cardinal, the yellow one. We'll probably get time, maybe even to run that today, depending on how bad the rain is. All the hinge slots look pretty tight?
Yeah.
Okay, then you can mix up some of that epoxy, and I'd mix a little bit at a time. I wouldn't mix too much. Okay, now Mike's putting the epoxy down into the hinge slots with a little tool. Show me the serrations on that tool. We just put some serrations on there with a parting wheel. Okay, pack the epoxy right down into the hinge slots. I like to use the old, just put them on by hand. Pinch the hinge. Make sure there's epoxy on both sides. Use a little towel to wipe your hand. And Mike's using the more hinges the better method. How many hinges? You got 2,000 hinges? You got like Strager hinges on here.
Yeah.
You know what I love? Everybody asks you, why are there so many hinges?
I just wanted to see.
It's worth it just to see that people ask you questions.
Yeah, I just wanted to see if I could do it.
Oh, it'll work. Okay. Now you want to take that little ruler and just see if you got them half in alignment by using a ruler on the end. Bob Dixon probably be impressed with this. He likes using rulers for everything. Okay.
Perfect.
Okay, now wipe that, and then the last thing, when all the hinges are in straight, take a Q-tip with some alcohol and wipe that edge so you don't have any in the barrel where we put the oil on the barrel. And I would always do the elevators first, and then while this is drying, you want to scrape all the paint off the horn here. Because once you push that on, if you force it on with that paint on the horn,
can't get it off.
Yo, man, Chinese necklace time. And we're using a slow drying 2-to-1 SIG epoxy. And just do it by, I try to do this with Q-tips and everything, every other way. Sometimes you're better off just making them. Oh, there's where my croaky went. I knew my croaky was somewhere. This sucker, I looked all over for my croaky. It was gone. Oh,
you know, it happens.
Yeah, they walk away. I've noticed.
If Peeps ain't got it, somebody else got it.
Peeps had my croaky. Where is that Peeps? Hey, Peeps. Bob Gieske's going to eat you for lunch. Okay.
This is working out well.
Okay, is that?
Yep.
Can I go do email now while you're working?
Go ahead.
Last time you said that the house caught fire. What's the problem? Okay. Now the key to all of this is to get the hinges dry in this part. Mike just went out for lunch. To make sure all the hinges are in position and dried nice and tight. And then we're going to take each one. We're going to lubricate it just a little bit. Make sure that it's nice and tight in the position. Move it back and forth and get one more little drop of oil down in there before we install this. But this is a great way to put hinges in the plane. I like this way a lot. As soon as Mike gets back from lunch, we'll start installing these hinges. Now what we're going to do is one elevator at a time. Since these hinges are nice and solid, use the tool, make sure that's mixed good. We got our serrated tool here. And get plenty of epoxy in each one of the hinge slots. Wipe these just a little bit, and then while it's drying, we'll get all these little areas with some Q-tips with alcohol. And constantly, the one thing you never want to do at this point, Mike, is like walk away from the plane so the epoxy sets up, because as it's curing, you want to be moving the control surfaces, you know what I mean, so that you don't get a nice a locked up elevator or something at this point in time. There you go.
Okay.
And get plenty of epoxy in there, you know. It's easier if you just do one surface at a time than if you try to do 2 or 3 at it. Then you just wind up rushing. Take a little bit of alcohol on there and work it in. When you get one side done, and flip it over and do the other side. I think that's the easiest way. And then when you're all done, take dry Q-tips and get in there. That gets the last little bit out. I see some of that will ooze out the top too. Dip it in. What we did, we dipped it. Where's your little cup with the alcohol?
I got it here.
Okay, he's got a little shot glass of alcohol. And just make sure that isn't walking away. Make sure there's some on the horn. And once one is done, they'll work on another row. We'll do one surface at a time. Mix new glue each time. This way you got the maximum amount of time to work on it. Just wondering if it looks better with the hinges in. Turn it a little bit so we can see if it looks better. I like it. That classic Cardinal. Ms. Jamie. Oh, it looks nice. Definitely good.
Not enough.
All right, now you got to get the alcohol in there. Did you clean all the little hinge pockets up and everything?
This one's got to be done yet.
Okay. Well, let's do it. Let's finish. We'll take it out in the sun if there's. I feel like we live in England.
There's no sun outside.
Speaking of England.
It's just warm.
Speaking of England, Elliot.
Look who showed up.
Look who showed up to help Mike put his hinges in today. Okay. Mike's babysitting the hinges while that epoxy gets the final cure, and then we'll put a little bit of penetrating oil on there and some chain lube. Get those hinges right. In the meantime, we'll get the motor set up. This is one of the old Super Tiger 60s that Mike's going to run with a pipe that we made especially for this plane as one of the test pop. Alright, so we ran the Tiger 60 for a little while, make sure everything is kosher. And this is the Magnum. Magnum, we still don't know if it's a 52 or 53. Hell is it, a 52. This is Bob Dixon supplied the engine. And we're going to run it in the usual way. Try to get half a gallon or so through it on here.
We have a plug so I can...
Yeah, we need it. Let's test one of these Merlin plugs. See the one that says standard? Take that one that says standard out of there. Make sure it lights. Let's try this. They don't give you a plug with the, I guess for $119 you don't get the glow plug. Now this one I notice has the carb on the other side, which, yeah, we can get in there. That's no problem. Looks very nicely made and supposedly relatively good quality. Well, that I believe right after about 10 gallons of fuel. Sunlight's hitting it, you can't really see it. That's better. All right, you got 8,000. We don't want to run it wide open. We got it restricted now. We're just going to let this break in on the bench. And this will be ready to put in. You bring that Cardinal, Lamar, we can put in the Cardinal. Yeah. this time I hooked on a piece of tubing from the breather. You can see it. Obviously it's breathing out of there. That has given us our first chance to try those Merlin plugs, and it looks like they seem to run fine, at least on the bench. We're going to put one in this guy if we get out to the field tomorrow. Uh-oh, Mike's done. Anyway, another day, another dollar, another 4-stroke. Finally, we've got a day up at the field with, well, mild breezes, not bad. And I have Elliot Scott here to shoot some video, so Elliot's promised not to let the camera get out of focus. And what we're trying here is I have that carburetor adjuster spring adjusted so we're at 2/3 throttle now. Now, if you look at the last couple of flights, we were running a little faster than I wanted to. We got a 14.5 rev up, and what I'm going to do is just cut that throttle down. I'm assuming I'm at about 2/3 for the first flight, and it seems like we're going to be able to even shut it even more. first couple flights today, what we did is Mike flew the plane and he had the needle adjusted to his setting. And I don't have the lap times because Elliot was recording it, but I wanted to see. Now, the exhaust temperature on a 4-stroke is, George Oldrich says, about 150 degrees hotter. I wanted to see if I could melt one of these. It doesn't change the sound much, it just keeps some of the oil off the plane, but the main thing is to see if it's going to last 10 flights, 20 flights, 0 flights before it flies off the plane. It looks like it takes a little bit of the edge off the power, but right now we're at 2/3 throttle. And what I'm going to do later in the day is adjust that closed and adjust it open. And just basically using the throttle, no needle valve at all, set the motor where I want it. And it's been running, geez, just about as consistent as anything I've ever seen right now. Now all today's tests are on PowerMaster. No, don't go by the label. The label is, I put the fuel in another can. This is the blue stuff, is the 4-stroke fuel. Mike put this in the other bottle when he was using it. But it's really 15% nitro and 15% oil. The blue you can always identify as the 4-stroke fuel that you get from PowerMaster anyway. You had to just put it in the right bottle, Mike. We put 2 flights on the Merlin plug already, and it's the standard one with no idle bar. And by the end of the day, hopefully we'll get a couple flights with it. I don't know I'm not sure which one of these is going to work better, or if they're just going to be a tie, but we're trying to test some of these plugs for John Lowry and see if they're going to be appropriate for the future of our 4-stroke development. So far, it seems like they're fine.
Look at that grip. It's got incredible pull, and that's just 2/3 throttle. With an OS 70 4-stroke and a 15-year-old plane. Tradition. And this is the way Windy gets an instant cut with the engine. There we go. Beautiful. Whoa, look at that. Oop, a little bit of a nose over. Still the tradition with the OS FS out of the box. Had a few runs on it before we put it in the plane. It's been set up on the bench, but setting up on the bench was putting some fuel in and running a couple of tanks to it. And this sound is like a Fox 35 with this huge engine, and from the inside it's like flying an electric plane. Amazingly quiet. And retaining its line tension throughout the flight using a wooden 14.5 cut down to 13. You've got excellent overhead line tension, and the place where a Super Tiger 60 or even a pipe plane would start going soft during the pattern, there it is holding tight. the other thing is the incredible economy of the engine. It only needs a couple of ounces, even a 70, a big 70 like this, just not drawing the fuel. It requires a smaller tank, which is helping with the lack of change of CG during the flying. Instant engine cut. Beautiful. Bit of warning, one more lap, and down you come.
Well, I recorded the whole flight because I wanted to see the shut-offs. I was trying different needle settings. Doesn't seem critical to the needle whatsoever. Anyway, we came away knowing that we have that throttle ability now. We can throttle this at will. And at that, well, so far that little rubber thing didn't burn up. I'm sure it's killing a little bit of the power though. And we didn't get a chance to test any props, but we made use of a day that it's supposed to rain half of the day anyway, and we're going to go to Hobby Shop and see what they have available for 4-strokes right now. I purposely, when we sealed this, I think I sealed this on this video with that sealer that Rich Peabody gave, there is not one drop of oil, and I mean it's dry. You could rub your, there's nothing. This engine runs stone dry at this end. I noticed this is picking up water out of the grass, and this was wet. But the only fuel on the whole plane is on this gear leg, and I think if I turned that maybe out this way, no, I don't know, this remains to be seen. But even in here, I mean, there's nothing. We had some black here before I cleaned it off because I wanted to see if it's leaking. And now I can go in right at that screw right there, and every time I go to screw in, I have more carburetor. The other way I have less. I would count that, what do you think? This is the first day you've ever seen this. Impressive. Impressive, huh? Impressive. So we got back out to the field after a day at the shop, and back out here with Carlos Serra to take a flight. Carlos has just got his Miss LA tuned up and considering putting a 4-stroke in it. Has a Tiger 60 in it now. He wanted to get a test flight on this, so we called his boss up. Told him Carlos had a little problem with the van and he had to stop by Wendy's to get it fixed. But the idea is to get some flights on from as many people as possible. Not just to get 1 or 2 super experts to give you their opinion. It's when the people of a lower skill level have no trouble dialing into things. This is the first time he's ever flown the plane. And he can handle, well, get some idea of it anyway. This morning, that one flight we had with, well, it was really early this morning. We had going through through my own turbulence. I know that was pretty exciting, and that can happen here. The air is stone dead. He'll probably be backing up. Let's see, it's stone. But it doesn't, you know, doesn't take you long to either decide that there's some future here or there's no future. And I always find when people, now Carlos is an advanced level flyer, when advanced level flyers seem to have no trouble, you pretty much know experts are not going to have any problem. Well, we'll see if he likes it.
Misjudged it.
A little low on line tension, huh?
Oh man, this pulls my arm away.
You better start doing some exercises.
Holy macro.
Now this weekend coming up, we're going to try to have one of our mass fly sessions where we leave this plane, which we did last week by the way, leave this plane line and handle out on a field, and everybody at the club can get a flight on it. Anybody that would like to try it out. I'm just crazy happy the way it's working out. And remember, the air is dead, so the only problem is, in this case, if you go through your own wake, which I did already, you know, it can be a little intimidating. We still don't have the tank shim. Carburetor is 2/3 open, roughly 2/3 open. And of course, if we want to go a little faster, we take out the Allen wrench. 2 turns of carburetor usually equal about 1/10 of lap time. We have an air filter on. Taking the air filter off usually adds about 1/10 but no needle valve at all. The needle valve's just staying pretty much right at the point where well, we get it to run 10,000 on the tack and leave it there until you do some other major change. And that part of it's been really nice. We ran the little motor yesterday. The YS is already left. Well, from all I've heard, that's really a well-made motor. The YS has already left Nevada, I think they're coming from. It's very interesting to see how that works out. But this one really looks user-friendly. Now I'm looking forward to the upcoming Mass Cup in 3 weeks. We're going to take this plane up on Saturday, lay it out at the field, and let anybody shows up at the contest fly it. Get some feedback. People that like to fly a little faster, we'll open up the carburetor for them. People fly a little slower, shut the carburetor. Love to be able to get it out in some runway air. The first comment everybody has is, what line tension? Now we took, at one point in time, Mike had all the tip weight out. We put, I think, a 1/4 ounce back in here. I don't know, I just feel goofy flying with no tip weight. I don't know why. But, and it's not on solid lines, it's on braided lines. You really need to get a set of solids on here before the contest and practice up some of those 45-degree square eights. Anyway, we're going to head back to the shop. Boy, have we got work. We've been ginking around all day. I got 6 more things to do, more deliveries to make. But I was glad to get Carlos out here. Now, another nice thing, he's in his white work clothes, white shirt. Hey, where's the tie, Carlos? Anyway, there is with this setup, with that rubber duck on the muffler, which I know is hurting a little bit on the power bit, but there's so much power it doesn't even matter. What the beauty is just never having to wipe the plane off. I mean, that one landing gear leg gets a little spattering and that's it. I like that. Kind of like gentleman's stunt or something like that. Not sure what that is. See, now we really could trim this plane out. We really could get a spinner for it. Need to get a spinner nut. This is a different, I don't have a spinner nut. I could make up a set of little glass wheel pants for it and put it back into contest trim, do that, the cowling repair. That's a rainy day of work away. But when a model is built, at least the way I like to build them, 15 years later, you know you can still get something like some service out of it. And sometimes the best time of all is when they get old like this. They get to be old friends.
would fly that plane.
Anything.
Can I
Go
at least-
fix those VCRs.
Can I at least take the starter home with me as a souvenir?
Another. This is the first day in a long time I had 2 flying sessions. Didn't adjust the needle all day. Everybody got to fly. Pathetically easy. Just pathetic. Well, it looks like we're going to have rain the rest of the afternoon. Anyway, tomorrow's supposed to be a nice day. But one of the things I'm thinking more and more of is, it really is, and I didn't know this was going to happen, it really is practical to use that throttle to control the speed. I really didn't know if that was going to work out. Several people, including Rich Peabody, have suggested that that might be the way to go. But I never saw it actually work until the last couple of days when we've had that little throttle adjuster on there. Unfortunate thing is, with all this rainy weather, the field really is not good. We're not getting any real quality air either. But the next part of this, I probably can get some flying in today. The next part of this is going to be that I want to set Strega up with the YS53 that's coming. Kind of excited about that. I've talked to several RC people that have told me that is an excellent motor, and in RC they use them all the time. It has a little bit of a different pump carburetor configuration, but before I get the van packed and get out to the field, I want to start thinking about, now that's only a 53, and I say I don't know if that means only it's going to turn a 12-inch prop or what, but the nice thing about these bigger engines, and I'm thinking this might be the thing that's really the key to this whole thing, is that this engine being a 70, it just has so much flexibility. And anybody that goes back into the early days when it used to be an ongoing argument between the various factions of the hobby that, a 40 was the best, a 50 was the best, a 60 was the best, whatever. Well, I was always on the side that said whatever it is, it has to be a big engine. The whole hobby has gone in that direction now. I think I'm 65 even bigger. The bigger the better is my point. When you have a class of drag racing where they allow 500 cubic inches, you don't see anybody using 300. Almost never, anyway. But anyway, looking around the shop here as I get packed up to go, and I'm trying to, in my mind, organize. I have some props to try today. I hope I can get some flights in between the raindrops. But this thing really looks like it's coming together now, along with the other projects we have in the shop. I would just add this as one more interesting thing that's been happening here. And we have Elliot Scott totally convinced now. He's started the Typhoon drawings already. He was just about as liquored up as anybody could get when he was here, and he's excited about it. We went down to a local hobby shop and picked up some plastic models of Typhoons and a photo enlarger that he's going to use to get me some accurate ideas on this, what I hope real soon is going to be on next year's project, the Terrible Typhoon. Now another possibility is, because we have 2 fuselages for this plane, Miss Ashley, we have a whole spare fuselage, that if this YS turns out to be a promising engine, which I'm pretty sure it will be, and we want to test, as soon as I get started making the carbon fiber tanks, I want to get one of the ones I've made tested. The resin is already here, the resin is on the floor, waiting for Wayne's tooling as we speak. But this would be a good test bed to put a carbon fiber tank in a YS, and then just bolt in this wing and tail. It would give me another choice. It actually would give me a whole nother plane, and I could keep one fuselage for the jet development, and keep another fuselage for which I didn't anticipate when I did that. I assumed that I would just be that we didn't know about the 4-strokes then. But another point is, I don't want anybody to misunderstand and think, oh boy, there's going to be a fire sale on jets or something, or Super Tiger 60s, or Fox 35s. The objective of everything is to have all of these things working, have all of the motors working, and not try to segment the hobby out to where every plane looks alike, has the same motor, the same anything. I just like to add to the variety if I possibly can, and not in any way take away from the already developed fine packages that we already have. The Tiger 60 is still competitive. All the jets and PAs, as far as I can tell, they're just running like Rolex watches. But it would be nice every time you can add one choice to that. I don't know, to me, It just improves the hobby. It makes it more interesting. And I certainly think at this point in time, somewhere down the road, I just have a feeling you're going to see a lot of 4-strokes. Surprised at next year's Nats if you see an awful lot of Brodak candy apple colors out in the front row either. Anyway, see if we can get some flights in between the raindrops. Well, they're predicting rain this morning, but I want to get a couple of props tested here. Now what I've been doing is keeping a stick with all the props that have already been on the plane. One of the things that's kind of a nuisance about the 70 is it needs to have the prop hole opened up. It's a larger than 1/4-28 thread, so I've been trying to make a set of props dedicated. So far, out of all the prop testing we've done, the 14.5 rev up has proven to be well, the best under most conditions. One of the things we've learned, and actually Mike was the one that uncovered it, was kind of a little trick or a tip. In the beginning, what we were doing with this, we were choking it, priming it, doing all kind of things, and then flipping it. And that, yeah, it starts, but what happens is every once in a while it starts backwards. And if the plane is in a stooge and you're not holding it, it's like an accident waiting to happen. So what I've resorted to, and I know there's some people that'll be not happy about this, but believe me, it took me a couple of days to get comfortable with the idea, is what I do now as a starting routine, and I'll get a couple of these on video, is fill a tank. There's no connection between the muffler, and that's proven to be a big tip. No connection here, just an open tank, no uniflow, nothing. A box, a 4-ounce box. The reason I think we're getting away with this little rubber extension, and later on today I'll take it off, put it on, take it off, put it on. My first choice was I wanted to see if it would melt, because these exhausts really get hot. And this is a good time to find out if that's going to be the case. And I also have some 600-degree resin that I want to use to make carbon fiber mufflers. I want to find out about at what temperature these things start to self-destruct. It's hotter. An exhaust on a 4-stroke is hotter, according to some of the people that have contributed into Zambelli's email, by about 150 degrees. It's quite simple. Fuel up the plane, hit it with the starter, and in about between 1.5 and 2.5 seconds, it's running, and it never runs backwards, and it never pops. Another side benefit of that, it never loosens the prop, and probably if we were looking to get out nose weight, we could eliminate the double nut on the propeller. But these are just little things that are coming across as we develop the plane. Another thing today that I want to test, I have a whole gallon of 10%. This is George Oldrich's fuel. And we've been using, but I'm going to run out. You can see I only have 1 gallon left after this. This is the blue is what amounts to be the 4-stroke fuel. It's 15%, even though we've been mixing in the jars and stuff. We have the wrong label on there. This is 10% GMA and 15% nitro, 15% oil. It seems like it makes a little more power and runs smoother on the 4-stroke fuel, but it certainly runs okay on this fuel. So I don't know between the end of the day where we're going to wind up, but certainly within the next week or so we have to make a decision and order some fuel from PowerMaster. Fun working with the props, because this engine has so much torque that the prop is not a real critical thing. If the prop is too big, you missed the needle. Nothing is critical. It's like a diesel truck, as opposed to some motors where if you're running a 40 engine on a Schnurly 40 on a tuned pipe or something, it gets real critical, it gets hot, it gets... What happens with this package, even with the full 14.5, it just loafs along and you want to go a little faster. We've had it running fast, we've had it running below 5 seconds. We close the throttle, it runs over 5 seconds, but it just keeps grinding out the torque, and I think that's the impressive part of this so far, is just how uncritical it all is. I don't really know is because, again, remember, this is a 70, and there's a tremendous advantage. It's not just, oh, it's a 70, it's a 70. It really does have a lot more pulling power. Now, I don't know when we do the YS tests or the Magnum tests, or I don't know when we get into doing these smaller motors if they're going to have the range that this has. But certainly, Elliott Scott is going to try to get us a laser. And they make a laser 80, a 90, and a 100 as well as a 70. Where I don't know right now if we made this an 80 if it would be even better. Now some people disagree with this technology. Oh, you don't need that big of a motor. You could use a 40 and just run it harder. You could use an 049. But I still have one golden rule that in all of motorcycling, in all of drag racing, in all of boat racing, and in all of model aviation is always proven to be true. Like gravity, it never changes. And that is, the bigger a motor gets, the less hard it has to work, and the friendlier it gets, and in this case, the quieter it gets. Even though this is real quiet, I think it's the quietest I've ever flown, and I've been working on muffling systems since 1987, and I've never gotten anything even close to this. And it comes with the motor. But the significant thing is just how friendly it all is. I mean, I guess that's the part of it that I need to see duplicated over and over as we fit more and more planes up. I need to know if the smaller engines are this friendly or not as friendly, as critical, not as critical. But there's a significant gain in this package just in the fact that it's a 70. And I have a feeling like with the laser, if you could bump that up to 80 and still balance the plane, or in the case of the Typhoon, purpose build a plane with a very short nose, somewhere in here there's going to be magic, I hope. And if there isn't, the worst that'll ever happen is we come back to the 70 just as we see it now, or that we go back to other packages like the 2 cycles with the big mufflers or quiet tune pipes. Now the tune pipes that I made, they're the quietest ones I've ever run, ever. But again, they don't approach the quietness you have here. Now, to give you an example, I'm out at the field, the sun is not even up today. And I've been on purpose coming out here 2 hours before we're supposed to start flying to see if anybody'd even know if I was here. So far, nobody has even known that I was here early in the morning. I always like to start off a day exactly where I left off the day before. And in that case, we were using up the end of the 4-cycle fuel, because one of the tests I want to make is I want to see what the run time is. And you notice what the last couple of days we've been recording the end of the flight because the shutoff. In the very beginning, we had kind of a funny shutoff that I wasn't happy with. When you put the 4-stroke fuel in, that completely eliminates the funny shutoff, because what's happening is you're running the motor richer. The needle is further open. And what's happening, you get about a lap, maybe a lap and a half of hesitation, which is real nice, especially if you're going to be in the overhead 8 or something. And then you bring the plane up to 45 degrees and it just shuts off nice and clean. So at a team trial, say, assuming you were going to fly this at a team trials, that may be a lot of fun. Now the other thing is, Elliott got us a copy of the FAI rules, and I was not aware. I always thought that it was only the AMA that you could run big 4-strokes in, but apparently, and we'll find this out, I guess George Oldrich will know the real reason. By the way, not having to wipe the plane off, there is a lot less oil on here, even than with a tuned pipe plane. One of the things I want to know for sure is, and I'm real curious about it, I want to see that rule in writing, and Elliott gave me the rule book, I just didn't look at it. Because if you can use it, I know they were complaining that you couldn't use a PA65 in FAI or something. So I need to know what that rule really is. I mean, I really am interested in knowing what it is. I guess we'll find out. Again, the nice thing about the starter, it totally eliminates beating your hands up, and boy, my hands have been beat up lately. In fact, I got a battery that won't stay on the glow plug here. That's not too good. Anyway, and usually the first start of the day, it'll go around about a second more than it does. What I've been doing is at the end of the day putting 4 drops of Rizlone or Marvel Mystery Oil or Air Tool oil down into that little fitting. That was George Oldrich's recommendation anyway. Motor is on back compression, so that it actually turns the first revolution and a half before it fires. The idea is so it doesn't backfire. routine after a flight, and I've got this pretty well. Now that I say that, it was fine. Pretty well figured out. The first time, I forgot to mention this, the first time you run the motor, after you put the Rizlone in here, a couple of drops will ooze out on the top of the fuselage. We're obviously going to try to come up with some kind of a little gizmo, something better there. But I'm going to try to use up the end of the 4-cycle fuel here. Before I start changing props, I'll just get a couple of flights at different needle settings. The needle doesn't vary that much. I've gone in 2 clicks, out 2 clicks. As long as I can get it to turn 10 grand on the ground, it seems like it'll go through a stunt pattern at the right speed, at the right time. If I want to slow it down, I close the throttle. I want to speed it up, I open the throttle. It seems kind of idiot-proof at this point in time. The only other thing is I want to start making up props to run it at different speeds. Maybe a prop for the wind where it'll run a little harder. Prop for air like this. Now the air is stone dead. Stone. I mean, I'm running back, making myself crazy here. And that's amazing to me how quick you get used to using an electric starter and not having your fingers all beaten up. Just amazing. I always want to make sure it's on back compression. In fact, in this case I can start the watch first. the air is getting kind of shifty already, but I want to get a couple of prop tests in. I guess that's the most productive thing to do right now before the rain comes in. The rain is definitely on its way. I can feel this coming. But we will get some flights. Now, as I go through the props today, try to get a couple flights on each prop. One of the things that's obvious right from the get-go is they're not real critical. One of the things I thought was going to happen is we'd run into this thing where you're always pitching props and they're very critical. It's exactly the opposite. This has such a wide range. Again, I attribute most of that to the fact it's just a 70. There's nothing special here. It's just a bigger motor. And what's happening is as I go through the props, the stock 14.5 is really the powerhouse prop, but it's real happy on the BY&O. And these props will have a little bit less pitch and a little bit less diameter. And I've gone through them and I've gotten down to a 14.5 cut to 12.1. And even this prop, RPM goes up a couple hundred RPM. The speed levels out in level flight at roughly the same. And you notice the level laps seem to be a little faster than they would be with a 2-cycle. And the maneuvers seem to be a little slower. At least that's the way it feels from the pilot's perspective. But I don't know until we check it, and it really doesn't matter anyway. A lot of people, oh, you're going 5.8, 5.3, 5.2. The level laps don't mean any. You don't get scored on any but the first two of them, and the speed doesn't count. But it's the maneuver speed and how solid it feels in the maneuvers. And this just absolutely feels as solid anywhere, overhead 8, vertical 8, anything. And it's that feeling of being solid, and it seems to lock into one speed and stay there. And you can adjust that speed very conveniently with the throttle. That's what's come out of this so far. I'm also thinking it may be that we don't even need. We just need to settle in on 1 or 2 props. We're not going to have to be cutting and changing pitches and things. It may be that we're going to settle in on, and it looks like if we had a choice right now, any of the 14.5s, starting with a stock one and going down to 12 inches, they all seem to be relatively happy on this powertrain at different throttle settings. Over at the little temperature gauge, right now it's about 89 degrees. It's probably going to be 90 by the time we get to flight. In fact, I'm sweating like a pig. But one of the things, another thing that's come out of this, and I'm guessing somebody from a warmer part of the country would know this better than I do, is you get here early in the morning, it's relatively cool, and with other setups that I've had, I guess every 4 or 5 degrees you're changing the needle valve. What I like about this, and I don't know how this is going to work in the real world, but it seems like you can pretty much now, it was set the same as it was yesterday when Elliot was here, and as long as you can put the tack on and see somewhere around 10 grand, I've just been launching the plane and not been fooling with it. And I guess there's some merit in that. The merit is that probably for a person, an advanced level flyer or somebody who didn't want to do a lot of tinkering with motors, that adds a real big positive step into what they're trying to do. The people like me that like to tinker, we're never happy no matter what. If I hit the lottery, I'd probably be annoyed. But I do enjoy this. This is one of the parts of the hobby that I really enjoy. The other part I enjoy is dreaming about these typhoons. Now for sure, one thing I'm learning here is that this motor is happier with, these two props are exactly the same except for the diameter, but it's got more drive. But the motor seems to be happier with the bigger prop load, which is the opposite of some 2-cycle engines. They get happier as you take the prop load away. But having gone from 14 inches right down to 12 with these, it's looking like, and you never really know, but in this dead air, it's looking like it's happiest right around 13 inches. When one of these 14.5s is cut to 13. We got some BY&Os from Brodak we're going to check. But I still want to always have like a real genuine square one And by the way, tightening these props, you better not even think about using one of those 4-way wrenches. Because like I said, the motors do backfire, especially if you try choking them and priming them and flipping them by hand, which seems really unnecessary, unless there's some compelling reason like your macho or something. It's just more fun being a wolf, I guess. They start so easy with that electric starter. And what I've got, this one is 13.1, somewhere around 13 inches. There's that nice area where the motor is real happy. It shuts off nice, loads of tension, and it just seems to give that constant speed in the maneuvers. It never gets fast, and it never seems to bog down. Definitely eerie, because I'm used to being out at the field, and by lunchtime I've gone through a gallon of fuel. Well, what happens is, because you're only using 4 ounces of flight, it seems like you look at your watch and say, where did all the time go? Anyway, this is going to be the last of the, I think we get one, maybe 2 more out of this. And then I want to switch over to the 10% GMA fuel and see if there's any gain or loss. I can check the time. I've been recording the time of each flight. See if I've gained or lost. I still want to try taking that little rubber extension, and I think the only reason it's letting me run that extension on here, which by the way keeps the plane nice and clean. Normally, let's say with a Super Tiger 60, when you put that extension on, you lose about 300 RPM. With this, it seems like you lose 100, maybe not even 100. But you've got so much to begin with that you can just get in, open a throttle, another turn, and you've got it back. That's the trouble. I mean, one of the troubles with running a motor that you're always at the razor edge is when you get to the razor edge and you need a little more, you're already at the edge. So we still have, from where we are now, roughly 1/3 of throttle we can open at will. Another funny thing, the mileage doesn't change dramatically. I mean, it's hard to explain. I thought as soon as you open that throttle up, it's going to use 7 ounces of fuel. No, it goes a little faster on the fuel, but nothing you can't deal with. Not a dramatic, radical change. kind of settled in on this 13-inch diameter. Real happy with the line tension and the speeds. Just a little over 5.0, 5.1. That's the speed you need to fly at this field. In this air, you could fly a lot slower. But if you notice, one of the things you notice, the maneuvers get real slow. I like having that extra little time at the bottom and stuff. It makes the bottoms very consistent. But the rest of the day I want to spend, I brought up some 5% GMA PowerMaster, some 10% GMA. I'm about out of the 15. I want to see if it's going to run well on the 10% fuel. Things I always do, when I open up a gallon of fuel, I put 2 squirts of Armor All in it. That's a trick we learned from Big Art Adamisson. Now another thing, the first flight, when you're using new fuel, obviously you want to try to either re-needle it or know that the needle is going to stay the same. Now the blue dye in the fuel, the 4-stroke fuel, this has a different oil content, different nitro content. So we know for sure that first flight, you know, I'm going to empty this pump out. I don't try to save the last little bit. Because what will happen is I won't get the first run will be, well, it's going to be a little contaminated anyway. Another way you could do this that wouldn't be a problem. Just put some of it in here since we're done with our 4-cycle fuel part of the day. Now I want to order up, we have about 2 months left in the flying season. And the objective here is there's some conflicting data that I'm not sure I agree with. Some of the people seem to feel the 4 cycles should use 15% oil. Other people, including the manufacturers, say add oil. And I've always gone with whatever George Oldrich seems to feel is right in terms of fuel when I was developing the jets. And the fuel was one of the things that came out of that whole development was pretty much everybody here on the East Coast, I don't think there's any exceptions, or if there are a few, have gone to using PowerMaster fuel with really excellent results. So all I can bet is that I want to see how close the needle is going to be. It looks like we have quite a wide range, so what happens, even if you miss the needle, nothing really crazy happens. The plane just goes maybe a tenth slower. So far in all this testing, I haven't had really what I would call a lean run, where it just went crazy and ran 20 minutes. I've heard other people say that can happen. But I think because we're running the engine really at part throttle, the chance of that happening is very low. Let's just see how much different this is going to be. Today, but basically like all people, the shop is calling. We have to get back to work. Maybe we can get out tonight, I don't know. But every session we have, we're learning a little bit more about these guys. At the end of every flying session, and I don't know if this is overkill, but this is certainly not going to hurt anything. I have the Marvel Mystery Oil. Just used one of the little fuelers to keep it in. And I guess with all the humidity and rain we've had, this certainly can't hurt. So remember, a 4-cycle engine doesn't get the same lubrication a 2-cycle does. And what I like to do, after I get that in there, make sure the battery, you don't have a battery on, just run it in. That's all there is to it. She's ready to go. And if we can get out here tomorrow, but first we have to see what's going on in the shop. Now today, at the end of the flying session, Augie Buffalano comes over to me with this magazine. It has a nice article about the typhoon and the tempest. Now, this is part of the fun of doing a new project, is starting to gather the magazines together, and obviously I'm hoping everybody's going to send me the typhoon stuff. The typhoon evolved into the tempest with a different wing, something I wasn't aware of, and I'm not sure. I got some exploded views that show where the actual physical parts layout in the model are, in the real plane anyway. Like this little sub rudder here, I think that's going to be one of the nice features of this, and of course the big nose to basically bury the big 4-stroke engine in. Yeah, I just get a feeling I'm going to have to answer the phone. Anyway, thanks to Augie Buffalano for loaning me the book. Obviously, that'll be a nice place to hide those valve covers. Now, in today's mail, one of the convenient things about using OS Max engines is, well, the price is $23 on these headers. But notice each one is a different shape, so for each plane, if you want to bring the exhaust in the body, halfway around the body, you want to point it down, you want to point it up. The only one we weren't able to get right away is the flex pipe one. That one's been ordered, and we ordered it for a YS and an OS also. And by the way, I bought an intake manifold too, in case I wanted to try to make up a, well, just to see for myself if a Venturi, I'm really interested in the height of the Venturi relative to the tank, if that would cure the tank shim. But I still kind of like the idea of dealing with the carburetor as a way of, and by the way, the next time we work on the plane, we're going to be working on this part of it. Trying to fit up some different mufflers, do some testing. These really make, and I can picture this being all inside the cowling of the Typhoon. Also, one of the things I did, I dug out my old, because a Typhoon, of course, has a 4-bladed prop, and I want to get some idea. I set the prop at 5 inches. Took the spare prop, and this is the one off the Spitfire that I know is a ballpark pitch, which is about 5 inches. And we're going to find out if we're even close. I also have the big BY&O, and I bought a couple of spinners just to dress the model up. And I hope tomorrow is going to be a flyable day. And if it isn't, we'll come down and start fitting up the headers. Also, this is the stuff Rich Peabody gave me. This seems to work. This definitely would work on a tune pipe ship too. It really kept almost 99% of the oil from the header joint. So the last of the things that we want to fool with, before the next session, is I want to get the spinner fitted up. I'll bring these to I actually could do these at the, I'll wait for a rainy day, and I'll have the material to make a Venturi, or in the worst case scenario, to take the carburetor and I just move it further down so that it would be equal to the tank shim. It would be near the tank shim. I don't know if that's exactly how it's going to work, but we're not going to know until we try. I'm not looking, all of a sudden he's eating my OS parts. Anyway, I often wonder if what's going to happen, I've gotten some emails to this effect, that as you make this longer, it could, in effect, give the engine a boost or restrict it. I don't know if the deep bends in the headers, sometimes they restrict. Again, these are 3/8 tubes. And the fact that you can buy them for around $23 right at a hobby shop, just walk in and buy them, they're right on the shelf, really makes working this kind of stuff a lot easier than each one you have to hand machine yourself or make yourself. Very convenient. Another thing we're going to be testing in the next week, Mike's got the header and pipe, the Super Tiger 60, and his special pipe that I made him up for his candy apple ship. That's about ready to fly. And then we can get the footage and finish up the candy apple video that we're going to make dedicated to the whole painting of this plane. Coming this week. Yeah, you got it, just in the nick of time. Now, we have our for testing purposes. This motor belongs to, now let's not get the Dixons mixed up. Bob Dixon is in Georgia. Don Dixon is in Arkansas, and this is his motor, which we're going to run for him. We're going to set it up, we're going to wear it out, we're going to beat it up. Yeah, we know all about the instructions. Now, YS motors are just a little bit unique in the way they get set up. What a piece of work this is. Oh my God, I don't even want to take it apart. We obviously are going to bench run it. Now, I can tell you, if you're interested, I've had YS engines before. I've had their 2-cycle engines. One of the things they are is they are just beautifully made. They're fuel injected. They don't get treated the same way you treat your typical 2-stroke motors. You don't ever want, if I remember right, you don't ever want to disassemble them. I mean, that was one of the things from years ago. Don't ever take them apart. But now this motor has the carburetor located much lower, in a much better, I think, place for what we're doing. But it's a fuel pump. It's a pumped engine. This is not a, and I'm going to read the directions, not to belabor this all. We'll put most of this on the next tape because we're going to obviously retrofit this in, but this is a little bit of an oddball thing. You'd need to make a room for this, make some room, and for sure, some of the things like the priming and choking, if that's one of the things you're going to do, well, we'll read the directions. Joe Adamusco already, maybe by next weekend, will have one of these in his Stuntress. They give you some nice directions. Needless to say, I'm excited about it. I'm really excited about getting this puppy into a plane. Now, this is supposed to be, I mean, of all the RC flyers that I know well and I can depend on their information, this is the Cadillac of the motors that's out on the market right now. And may or may not be appropriate. Again, we're going to find out. And we'll put all that information on the next video. We'll actually do the bench running and do the retrofitting and hopefully get out and fly it. What a piece of work. Boy, that's a beautiful thing. According to our chart, it's, well, it sits right in the middle. It's about 50 grams heavier than an OS 52, but about, well, it's 460. And the motor we're using right now is 540 with no exhaust. So it's quite a bit lighter, I would expect. In fact, it's a lot lighter. It's heavier than the OS. The 52, it's heavier than, lighter than the 70. And again, we're going to add all the pertinent information to the chart. But again, one of the most significant things I've learned so far is almost everybody that picks one of these up says, oh, it's way too heavy. That'd make my plane way too nose heavy. And when they're all done retrofitting in the little tank and the wooden prop and all the things that go into the final scenario of running it, what happens when they're all done with that, the plane flies fine. So, I don't know. I mean, that's the part of it I'm not sure I really understand, but that, tradition is flying with a 20-ounce motor, and it doesn't have any loss of corner. It certainly has no loss. Line tension has gone to the moon, and the corner is fine. Now, part of it is that it's a thick airfoil plane, but this motor certainly isn't going to make anything nose heavy. What a beauty. And we'll see Joe this weekend. We'll see what kind of luck he has. See what the little muffler looks like. Oh, there's just all kind of cool little stuff. And I know I already ordered, smart guy that I am, I already ordered a little flexible header so we could kind of route the header back in the body. Another nice thing with Tradition, the way it's set up with that little rubber duct, there's absolutely nothing to wipe off. There's less oil on a plane than with a tune pipe. Now I got a really nice letter, and this is going to be about the last thing on the tape today. A really nice letter from Don Dixon, the guy that's contributed the YS motor. Why do these Dixons all have the same name? Why can't one of them be Ertnowski or something? Anyway, he contributed to my Buy a Fish fund. Every year my mother buys me a fish for my birthday, and Don said he'd like to buy a fish. Now, I think that's kind of cool, so we're going to go shopping tonight, or tomorrow, I'm not sure when. within the next couple of days, and we're gonna add to our fish collection, which now has about 60. I think we've counted 60 fish in that pond. These are when they were babies. Boy, how long ago that was. These are all the fish that died on me last winter, and our new school of fish is growing on a daily basis. Remember, we're eagerly looking for Typhoon. Boy, if I could have one Typhoon picture for every Spitfire picture I have. Anything to do with Typhoons, I'd love to borrow it. I'd love to beg it, copy it, steal it, whatever. Elliot is already making drawings for the new Typhoon. It's coming, and I hope we're going to be able to run a 4-stroke in it. Well, time will tell. See you on the next tape. But a word I've gotten back is that Elliot Scott has a little 4-cycle motor. I think it's a 52 Max. And he's already got it in my original prototype Cardinal in England. I'm flying it very successfully. We'll find out more. Looking forward to seeing Elliot in the upcoming week too. Anyway, hope you enjoyed the tape. Please contact Bob Zambelli. Get on his 4-cycle mailing list. Join us on the adventure. Let's see what we can learn from each other. And just think how boring it'd be if every motor was exactly the same and every plane was painted the same color. Everybody wore the same hat or the same shoes or something. I mean, look around. It's the diversity of this event that makes it, to me, it makes it very special. It's one of the special features of it. Diversity. Imagine, now just as one thing, imagine a 4-stroke 91 in this. Look at the short nose moment arm. Al? Hope you'll consider 4-strokes. Boy, and if you ever thought a plane was underpowered, put an OS 70 in it, and you better be doing some exercising before you go flying. Darren, after all these years, who would have ever thought testing 4-strokes is where he'd wind up spending his latter years? And we still have 3 really nice Spitfires up in the museum, and I mean, I wouldn't discount someday one of them might have 4-stroke engine and a 5-blade prop. Anyway, more coming. It's going to be probably the most exciting subscription video year that I've ever had. I hope we'll have a lot of people joining us with Typhoon information, 4-stroke information, carbon fiber wing information, carbon fiber fuel tanks. All of this stuff is coming. And it's coming faster than you ever would think it would. And again, thanks for joining us. And before we go on to the next tape, I want to thank Warren Walker for he's contributed some penetrating oil. And according to his note, this is some super penetrating oil if you ever get nuts and bolts that are stuck. We always have need for that around the shop, but he's got something even better. And I got to share this. I just love sharing stuff like this. Now these are Warren Walker's personal. This is the second time he sent these. By the way, we like the hot ones just a little. Which ones you like better, the hot ones, Care? Well, she hasn't tried the hot ones. Wendy ate the whole tube of hot ones here. Anyway, Warren Walker's homemade pickles. There's 4-cycle pickles and 2-cycle pickles. Warren, they're just great. Thanks a bunch. See if you can get us some 3/8 heat-proof tubing. We need 1200 degree 3/8 ID tubing. And we need more pickles. Hey Warren, I got to tell you again, thanks a lot. Thanks a lot to Don Dixon for his contributions. And I just can't wait. I just can't wait. More stuff coming. More motors. We even have one we're going to put on a profile Cardinal. All coming up soon. See you on the next tape.